Gentlemen and scholars, today I want to talk about old money. So, the difference between old money and new money is in the name, basically. So, old money is money that's been in your family for 75 years, 100 years plus. So, usually a grandparent or a great grandparent made a fortune and has passed it down to your parents, and they've passed it down to you. New money is anything younger than that. So, it's usually like your parents, they made a lot of money, or you did. And the difference is that there is an institution with old money. It is that once you're in it, there's a very high barrier to entry, but once you're in, it's kind of like a club. You're kind of rewarded for being in. You get safeguards, and I'm going to talk about those safeguards, and you have to earn them. But it's very hard to lose that once you have it. Once you have the connections, once you have the networks, it's very, very cool. And a lot of people want to be old money, especially new money, because they're like, okay, I want to be in this club. Like, what's that quote? Like, I don't want to be a part of any club that will have me as a member. It's very difficult to be part of this to be a member of this club. But yeah, like, you're not going to be in it. Like, chances are, if you're watching this video, you are not old money. You don't come from old money, and you will never be old money. They will never ever accept you, and that's okay. But by the end of this video, hopefully you'll learn a little bit about that. You'll learn about how to get into it at some point. It's an intergenerational thing, and how to set up your future lineage to become old money. So without further ado, let's get into it. So to get into that network of old money, you have to jump through a few hoops. So first of all, you need to have the money. So obviously, you can't be flying to St. Bart's and going to the right country clubs and having the right going to the right private schools if you didn't have the money in the first place. So you need to have the money. Next, it's the culture. So I grew up in London. I lived in England for 10 years, and there it's very, very rigid. It is, once the people who have money will stay there, and the people who don't will stay there. And there are certain things that stop them. And part of that is the culture. People who grow up Cockney, or like from the south of London, or from Peckham or something like that, they speak a certain way, which means they are not really going to be taken seriously by older institutions. They talk like this, bruv, or shit like that, whatever. If you do not speak with proper English or have the correct table manners, or you're not raised properly, chances are they're not going to take you very, very seriously. And part of that also comes with the culture is like, how you approach life, like how do you talk to other people, how do you network, how do you spend your time, if you spend your, Saturday nights out clubbing, or like, like just staying at home playing video games or whatever like that, like, sure, old money people can do that, and especially with the right people. But if you're in certain circles where they're not going to elevate you, unfortunately, there's no point. You're not going to be joining that network. The next is the job that you have. So old money respects institutions. After all, if something has been around for 100 years, chances are it's going to be around for 100 more. So this is stuff like real estate, banking, accounting, law, politics, stuff like that. Stuff that's going to be around forever. So they do not care, even if you have the money. If you made it in crypto, that means nothing, pretty much. It's like you might as well have made it, selling dog shit. Because yeah, maybe you got lucky, maybe you built a career building crypto, maybe you're very, very good. There are people who are very, very good, but it doesn't mean anything. It might amuse them, but why should someone who has a family office in a banking industry and is the head of a banking dynasty, why should he talk to you about like, oh, you bought Dogecoin or whatever? Because he's probably going to think it's a hoax. And, there's positives and negatives to that. Is he right? Is he wrong? I'm, for brighter minds than me to say, but it's definitely something to think about when choosing a career path. Will this get you in the right circles? That and your education. Did you go to the right schools? Did you go to Cambridge, Oxford, St. Andrews, Harvard, Princeton? The list goes on. Ivy League. Even going to like Stanford or Florida State University. Like, these are incredibly good schools, especially in certain programs, or USC. These are incredibly good schools, but they're not going to give you the type of networks into old money that like an Ivy League or a school in Paris or ESCP or these British schools that I just mentioned. You have to have gone to these places in order to earn the respect of, at least he has the degree in order to be among these people. And I'd say most importantly, to be old money or to be respected by old money, because that's what this video is about, it's you need to have self-security. So a lot of new money people, like, people who make, quick fortunes, whatever, they feel the need to flaunt that wealth. Like they'll wear like a t-shirt that says Gucci on it, or they'll have like a purple Lamborghini, or I don't know, like something gaudy. That's what gaudy comes from. The need to flaunt wealth. And the reason why they need to is because they're not comfortable being wealthy. They need to show off the wealth, and to show it off to their peers, the people they grew up with, and they feel, maybe it's like in the back of their brain, need to be like, okay, what's the point of having money if I can't show it off? Old money does not operate like that at all. And for example, like, let's look at the clothes. The way you look at the clothes, it's very telling of how they treat objects, how they treat money. New money, it's like, okay, let's show this off. This is for me. I want, people to respect me. So I'm going to have like a, golden, Rolex usually, or, a white t-shirt that says Gucci on it, or like the patterned, suit, the like Louis Vuitton luggage, all of that. They want to show that off. Old money approaches clothes like, here, let's get something handmade in France or handmade in Italy. Like, not only is it well crafted, it's not just a t-shirt that was made in a sweatshop that has a logo printed on it, like a Gucci thing. Not only is it well crafted, but it's gonna outlast me. I can pass this down to my generation. It's the same with my wealth. You can't really say that with fast fashion, especially fast luxury fashion. Like, it might come back every now and then, but you're not really leaving anything to your children. That's one key difference you can see between new money and old money. It's just based on aesthetics alone. But yeah, like, you need to have self-security in yourself, to be comfortable in your own skin. You can drive a car that, might not, be the flashiest, but deep down that this has stock. Same with clothes, same with education. You can walk into a room and you're not afraid of being yourself. You pass all the tests, you pass all the faux pas, like you wear the right watch, you wear the right clothing, you say the right words, but at the end of the day, if you don't have security in yourself, they can smell it on you. And this has happened to me before, this has happened to many people. You need to be able to walk into an old money room and say, no matter what, I will be okay. That's the confidence in the self-security to be old money. So yeah. And basically, let's get to the reason why you probably clicked on this video. It's, do you want your family to be old money? Like, you're not going to be in it. Let's just cut to the chase. You're never going to be accepted. There's this like wish fulfillment American fantasy of like, oh, I can just like marry into it. Like, everyone's seen those movies like Titanic or Crazy Rich Asians or The Notebook, like usually aimed at women, of like, it doesn't matter where you come from if you have the personality, Princess Diaries. But if you have, it doesn't matter where you come from, but like, if you have the personality, if you have the charm, the charisma, which you innately have in you, then it doesn't matter like your table manners or how you dress. Like, eventually a prince, usually it's for women, but like someone will come and sweep you off your feet and you will be saved from the life that you have. Like, there's this saying I like, which is like, Americans deep down just think they're temporary, not millionaires, that they'll get it back. So, and the easiest way to get it back is to marry into wealth. No, that's almost definitely not going to happen. These people are in circles that are tight knit. Most people, are married off to like the right family, not like arranged marriages, but like, you have to be vetted, because a big way of keeping old money is to make sure that you don't lose it in a divorce. And, so your parents are going to be like, hey, we got to meet this girl that you're liking. And, and then if she doesn't pass the smell test, then, your dad's going to be like, yo, yeah, you're not inheriting shit, because she's just going to take half of it. And what I or my grandfather or whatever spent so long building, it can be ruined with one bad relationship. So it's unlikely that that's going to happen unless you prove yourself in one of the fields we were talking about earlier: accounting, banking, real estate, law, politics, whatever. One of the institutions. If you can prove that you have the grit to live in there, it's not even guaranteed. after that, but that's the only path I really see for it. Like, it's not like you don't really see like models or whatever, like, oh, she's, like she's a model, she's an actress. Like, you don't really see them getting into it. Like, look at what happened with Meghan Markle and the royal family. Like, the most, I guess the most famous old money thing in the world. Like, look how much shit they had to go through, and then eventually he gets cut off from the family because it's a bad marriage, and they all knew it, and they try to warn him, but shit happens. So I don't know. I would say if you want to get into old money and you want to set your children up so they can be part of this network, it's you have to make the money first. And also it matters how you make the money from one of the institutions we were talking about, for example. You have to make a lot of money to be able to afford to send the next generation, to send your children to these institutions. You're bred from birth. It's like you have to go to this specific school, meet these types of people, go on these specific holidays. Like you have to be able to, that confidence I was talking about, it's like that's bred in you if from an early age, from the age of 5, you're meeting with politicians and titans of industry. So I myself haven't really been able to grow up like that, but I need to do my best to ensure that my children grow up like that and further whatever business I've been able to build, an accounting firm, a law office, maybe it's a political dynasty, something like that, something where there is an institution and there is a lot of power. That has to be done. Second of all, you have to instill in them the correct principles for using a lot of money. Have you ever heard the term generation 1 sows it, generation 2 grows it, generation 3 blows it? Basically refers to the idea that it doesn't matter how hard you work, it doesn't matter how much you want, to have generational wealth. Chances are, like, if your children are not brought up and your grandchildren are not brought up with proper manners or with the proper way of having to approach money, they're not going to respect it and they're going to fuck it up. They don't, a kid who grows up with never having to want for anything and never having any rules, because, wealthy, why not? Then they're just going to have fun. And I don't 100% blame them. I really just blame the parents, because if you really wanted your child to be able to keep that wealth and pass it on to the next generation, you would instill in them values. For example, like you have to work hard. Nothing is guaranteed in life. Like a lot of trusts that are given by old money families is you have to work at the family company for 5 consecutive years as this, to earn your whole inheritance or something like that. Or it's done in blocks, 5 years for the first million, 5 years for the next million, or 5 million or whatever. You have to marry this specific person to ensure that they don't go off, like doing cocaine and having fun. Like, that's simple stuff. But a lot of families don't do that. Look at the Vanderbilts, for example, the wealthiest family in America at the end of the 19th century. Within 3 generations, they blew it all because of one bad marriage and because nobody wanted to work. You have to continue to work. Let's say theoretically I'm old money and I grow up and I inherit $500 million, yippee, like for nothing. I went to Harvard and graduated, but that's the bare minimum in these circles. I mean, it's a huge accomplishment for 99.9% of the world, but that 500 million, and why should I work? I have 500 million. I do cocaine. I have fun. I make some bad investments. All of a sudden I'm down to 10 in like a couple of years. Now, everybody else who's working, doing those institutional jobs or, showing some grit a little bit, I'm not saying they're on their hands and knees all day, but they're doing something, they can get a bailout. This is what I was talking about. So if they were in that situation, they could go to like their friend's dad or whatever and be like, yo man, I need a bridge loan, and my accounting firm's a little fucked, or my law firm's a little fucked. Yo, can you help a brother out? Yeah, you're a good kid. Grew up with my son. Yeah, sure. If I do it, spent the last God knows how many years having fun, go to someone's dad or a friend and they're like, well, how are you going to make the money back? You're not skilled in anything. You don't have it, So, all of a sudden in one generation, I blew it. I went from 500 mil to 10 mil. Still a lot of money, but not enough to sustain the lifestyle that I would have wanted, and definitely not enough to raise my children, to be old money. They would have to be raised to regrow it back, which is very difficult because if I've never had any discipline, how can I instill discipline? So yeah, it's a very interesting subject, and it's it's set up in a way where there's a high barrier to entry, but a low barrier to exit if you don't know how to do it properly. So hopefully if you watch this video, you can, if you plan on building an old money dynasty, you can learn a thing or two, just instilling the principles that you should in the children, ensuring that they will keep what you have worked so hard to build, you know? And yeah, I mean, yeah, thank you. And see you in the next video.